What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, January 27th, 2020. We are live today. We are not a rebroadcast. We're not a best of. Well, I'd like to be a best of somewhere down the road, but at the moment, we're just kind of take it as it comes here. Anyway, the show is open. We're live here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room ready to answer the phone when you call on him, and with your questions, opinions, observations, and so forth and so on. Now, before we get into the show here, a little bit about what my situation is in response to all the emails and postcards and letters in a bottle that I've been getting here. And if you're trying to watch on YouTube, you're probably getting audio only. And that's because I'm still not back in my own home with my own broadcast setup. I'm still here in this, for the moment, I'll call it a facility, and I'll clarify what that means here in a little tiny bit. But to suffice it to say, I'm still not back home here. But the doctors have finally figured out what's going on with me. It is thankfully non-contagious, but it is a neurological disorder that affects old people. It's kind of uncommon, and I forget exactly what they called it. It was polymyelitis annoyus or something like that. And it's incorrect to say that I've been in the hospital all this time, because I was only in the hospital for about a week. And the rest of the time I've been in what is basically an inpatient physical therapy clinic, literally learning how to walk all over again. So that's kind of where we are. And I thought I was getting close to getting back home, but going into our home earlier today with the PT person in attendance here, I was thinking, I self-identify as Spider-Man, and the spiders looked down from the roof and said, "No, you're not either." And I did a major face plant right in front of the PT lady, who took out her clipboard and checked off, "Not ready yet." So it may be as much as 2 weeks before I'm back in the home. But we've got the Slash Up working here. And even though you're not going to have video to see my handsome face, we're going to start doing the shows every day live from 3 to 6 p.m. Central Time. So that part is now out of the way here. So let's get into it. One of the kind of depressing things for me is I've kind of been out of it between physical therapy and medications and everything. And so I was out of it for 3-4 weeks, and coming on back and getting plugged back online was how little has really changed. I thought about if I'd been at my home setup, I was going to have some music playing, some calliope music, circus music, because the impeachment circus is still going on. And it's always still the same thing. Adam Schiff is out there screaming accusations without any supporting facts or witnesses. Just, you have to believe me. You have to believe me. Trump is evil. He's evil. We've got to get rid of him. And of course, the rest of the Congress and pretty much the rest of America slowly tuning out. In fact, as of the last time they had this screed in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, half the galleries were empty. We're talking about an impeachment trial of a president of the United States of America. Only the third time it's happened in U.S. history. Would be only the first time a president was actually removed from office by the Senate, and the galleries are half empty. Nobody cares anymore. Nobody cares. Now, the one thing that did happen tragically this last weekend, which has given the corporate media an excuse not to report on the debacle that is the Democratic efforts to keep this whole impeachment thing going, was the crash of a helicopter out in Calabasas, California, carrying Lakers basketball legend Kobe Bryant, who was 41 years old, and his daughter Gianna, who was 13. They were both killed along with 7 others. They were flying by helicopter to his Mamba Academy for practice, basketball practice, obviously. And authorities are looking into just why the helicopter crashed, because they're saying it really wasn't that foggy, and they're not exactly sure what happened. But the investigators are reviewing the records and the fog conditions and find out what happened. Now, I'm familiar with that part of California. It's not that hilly or mountainous. It's not that difficult to fly. So it could have been pilot error, could have been mechanical problem. but something definitely happened and brought the helicopter down. Now, you want to talk about just how incredibly crazy the corporate media gets, because sometimes they can be incredibly tacky. And I think a good example of that comes out of the Washington Post, where there was this journalist who just yesterday tweeted a link to a years-old story about Kobe Bryant being accused of rape just hours after his daughter was killed. He and his daughter were killed in the helicopter crash. Now, to their credit, the Washington Post has suspended this reporter. But I mean, come on, a sense of decorum here. You know, why is all of a sudden that relevant, other than somebody says, oh, it's another excuse to put a, bad man rapes poor innocent woman victim on the headlines again. Now, interesting little article. This one came out of Your Destination Now. And it's pointing out that if CNN and MSNBC used the 9 rules that Jim Lehrer left behind, they'd shut down tomorrow. And it isn't just Jim Lehrer. When I was a kid, and if you're my age when you were a kid, you probably understood there were implicit rules by which the journalists and the TV news and the newspapers and everything operated, including fairness, objectivity, who, what, where, when, why, and how. The idea of maintaining objectivity. And I mean, this only goes back as far as Edward R. Murrow, who got into an argument with the CBS president of TV News, saying, sometimes there aren't there aren't 2 equal sides to a story. And CBS at that point had a policy. We present both sides of a story, both sets of claims with equal balance. That way we can't get into trouble and we can't get sued. Far cry from how things have evolved to today, where media has become a very much one-sided, leftist-guided, Democratic attack machine on the GOP and anybody who wants to get out there and speak truth to power. So, but people are picking up on it. And it's one of the reasons why people really aren't paying that much attention to the corporate media anymore. All righty, so getting on back to this whole impeachment situation, and apparently a new scandal is emerging from Schiff and the House Democrats. Apparently they spent nearly 24 hours last week repeatedly hyping testimony from 17 witnesses interviewed during the House's impeachment inquiry, none of whom had firsthand knowledge of any actual criminal conduct by President Trump. And there has to be a crime. You can't have impeachment without an actual committed crime. Just not liking the guy is not enough. But here's where it gets interesting, because apparently there was an 18th witness who actually had exculpatory information about Trump, and Schiff hid that from Trump's lawyers. Now, under the rules of discovery, that's a tacky no-no. They can take away your fruit salad at the next congressional lunch counter. But it seems like they were in the business of filtering the information even before it got to the House floor, let alone the Senate. So, and now, of course, we have Bolton's new book, which is coming out. John Bolton has this book. It's out there for sale. Book deal, book deal, book deal. And apparently this Bolton book manuscript accuses Trump of tying the Ukraine aid to the Biden investigations. Mind you, it's just another accusation. And this thing has been teased into the public by a partial leak of the manuscript by no less than the New York Times. So that's now out there so the Democrats can say, see, John Bolton's new book is going to make the case for us. So now it's a scream for, we need more witnesses. And here's where it's tricky. The Democrats want to call in just their witnesses against Trump while denying the GOP any opportunity to bring in witnesses in Trump's favor or witnesses to attack those who are attacking Donald Trump. Now, Lindsey Graham is promising to call in Hunter Biden to testify before the Senate. And apparently, Senator Hawley has drafted a motion to subpoena Adam Schiff, the whistleblower, and all of the Bidens to testify. That would include impeachment manager Representative Adam Schiff, ICIG manager Michael Atkinson, Eric Claramella, Hunter Biden, and Joe Biden to testify. Hey, fair is fair. Now, mind you, the way this is originally set up, we're supposed to be past the point of witnesses testifying. That was supposed to happen over in the House, but they failed to make their case. So now they're trying to hijack the Senate in order to retry and bring forth new witnesses, new liars, let's just call it what it is, to attack the president with. Now, CNN's legal analyst is admitting that at least in the court of public opinion, the president is winning the impeachment trial. Democrats have destroyed their own credibility, and one wonders why they are persisting with this, but we're going to have a theory about that. Again, story that's coming out of Hideout Now. Impeachment is so boring the gallery was half empty. Apparently people were leaving so rapidly they left behind a bunch of mittens, which in this winter is kind of a dangerous thing to do. Okay, so let's kind of sum up what's going on here. The Schiff coup, cabal, corruption front and center during the Senate trial. Everybody knows what's going on. Judicial Watch is back in court now to expose Schiff's conspiracy plus the crimes of FISA. And here's where it gets interesting. The Department of Justice is now disavowing the Spygate warrants targeting Trump. The Department of Justice is now saying those warrants were invalid. This is all coming apart. So why, oh why, oh why are they still persisting in flogging this dead horse? Well, Democrat House impeachment manager Representative Zoe Lofgren admits the impeachment is all about the 2020 election. And basically admitted this during an appearance on CNN's State of the Union. And back when this all started, more than a year ago, now I say, the Democrats can't possibly think they're going to drag this out into the 2020 elections, but it looks like they've succeeded. The first primaries are mere weeks away. We'll see what happens in those early primaries. If the impeachment issue blows hot or cold for the Democrats, if it blows cold, I'll bet the impeachment will just vanish like overnight from the corporate media, and they'll be out to something else like, Trump is incompetent, 25th Amendment, blah, 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 blah. Now, interestingly enough, and one possible early indicator of where the polls are going to be heading, where the primaries are going to be heading, a new batch of polls have really bad news for former Vice President Joe Biden and his campaign for 2020. Apparently, Bernie Sanders is surging into the lead. So we'll see what happens there. Now, let's talk about Hillary Clinton, who at this point, she's going to find some way to step in. Brokered convention, she's going to volunteer to step forward and save the Democratic Party, who have no clear front runners other than Bernie Sanders. So somebody did a biography of her called simply Hillary. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival this weekend. Hillary hit the red carpet in a sporty new pantsuit and then quietly walked out of the film before it even started. Which means either it's a really bad film, and I certainly have no intention of seeing it, or she already knows what's in it because it was made to her talent, made to her direction here. The other thing that's going on is Hillary Clinton has, or rather Michelle Obama joining Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have won a Grammy for merely reading their own book onto a DVD. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, go Tulsi. Still a big fan of hers, even though she's not my representative anymore, because she's still in Hawaii and I'm here in Indiana. And she has filed a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton for defamation, declaring obvious malicious intent over Hillary Clinton's Russian asset smear, saying it is clear election meddling, that Hillary had no basis for saying that Tulsi is a Russian asset. And of course, in the system, I don't know how far Tulsi's going to get with this, but I'm glad she's at least making the effort here. Now let's talk a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein, the name that will never, ever go away. Back when that whole thing was happening and that very strange death in prison, supposedly by hanging himself on his knees or something like that. And I said, if there's a cover-up, one thing that we can count on is that people who were in charge get promoted soon after. And I pointed out here how in the John F. Kennedy assassination, the officer in charge of security for the president eventually became chief of police of Dallas, while the officer, Ray Vaughn, who was accused of allowing Jack Ruby into the basement of the police department to shoot Lee Oswald, was eventually made chief of police of Midlothian, Texas. Well, it's already happened because the warden who was in charge of that prison cell where Jeff Epstein died has been promoted to a cushy club-fed job. So, yeah, it's pretty obvious what's going on. All right, let's talk a little bit about the international news here, because the Iraqis are definitely tired of the U.S. forces being there. They're literally marching in massive numbers in Baghdad, all across Iraq, in the millions, it's being estimated, basically saying it's time for the U.S. troops to go home. Yankee, go home. Boy, have we heard that one before. And apparently, starting on Friday, huge crowds of men, women, and children of all ages converged on the Jidraya neighborhood near Baghdad University. And they're all carrying banners and chanting slogans calling for the U.S. to get out, saying get out occupier, others saying yes to sovereignty. Now, as you know, there's the so-called green zone inside Baghdad, which is heavily fortified. It's where the new, very super large embassy was hit. And every once in a while, mortars and rockets and grenades will get tossed over the fence into it. It got a little bit more serious here, because yesterday 3 rockets hit the U.S. Embassy dead on. Direct hits. And this is a dangerous escalation in the spree of rocket attacks in recent months that targeted the embassy or Iraq military bases where American troops are deployed. So the people of Iraq do not want the Americans there. The government of Iraq does not want the Americans there. Why are we still there? Why are we still pouring our money and the blood of our children into Iraq? Somebody come up with a good explanation for that one. Now, the United States is going to start deploying anti-missile systems in Iraq, again, without the permission of the government. And apparently on January 8th, there was an Iranian ballistic missile attack on the Ain al-Assad air base in Iraq. 8 people were airlifted to a medical facility in Germany for possible traumatic brain injuries, which I got a confirmation report. We're talking serious, serious head injuries. And Trump downplayed to say, well, yeah, they've got some headaches. To Donald Trump, having a portion of your skull and brain blasted out on one side, that's a headache. John F. Kennedy died of a headache. Donald. And he is either totally sociopathic or he's just really out of touch what's going on. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Well, actually, no, we're coming up on a commercial break. But after the commercial break, we have a phone call waiting on the line here. Iran's Fars news agency says its website is blocked due to recent U.S. sanctions and saying that the Treasury Department introduced sanctions against the country. According to Fars, an international provider sent in an email saying that the reason for blocking the website was the order by the OFAC and the agency's inclusion into its specially designated nationals list. At the same time, the agency reported that its website with the .com domain was blocked. So when we start seeing Fars News, Press TV, and Press TV in English all blocked at the same time, it means the war with Iran is on. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, back with a phone call after these few words. Phone lines are loading up, so let's go to Kyle in Berlin. Aloha, Kyle. Welcome to the show. Wie geht's es Ihnen and what's on your mind?
Sehr gut, danke. Yes, I'm very well, Mike. I trust your health is getting back now, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, very good. I'm very happy to hear that. I'm a first-time caller. I've been listening for perhaps 4 or 5 years, but I just wanted to express my well wishes. I have perhaps a couple of topics I'd like to mention and then get your thoughts on them, if I may. The first one is Brexit and Boris Johnson. Now, I see Johnson as effectively an opportunist, also known as a normal politician who seemed to be the only one willing to take over the poisoned chalice of the premiership in the UK. He obtained a very strong mandate, that's for sure, in the election. So well done on that account. But, I keep thinking that he's most probably simply another yes man. And I'm not overly optimistic of anything less than incompetence by design in the next couple of years. What say you, Mike?
Well, we're going to start finding out what the reality is here in just another couple of weeks when the Brexit is supposed to hit its deadline. Um, I don't know. It's kind of hard. We keep looking at somebody and say, I think this is the real deal here. We had a lot of hopes, of course, for Donald Trump. We have a lot of hopes for Tulsi Gabbard. We had a lot of hopes for Boris Johnson. We do find ourselves continually disappointed. Part of the problem is, however well-intentioned anybody may be when entering the world of politics, the world of politics very quickly moves to corral and control them and bring them in line with whatever the consensus agenda happens to be right now. And right now, as far as Europe and Great Britain is concerned, the consensus agenda is keep it all glued together. We're pushing to this new world order, one world government. And if Britain succeeds in breaking away from the EU, it'll probably be followed by Germany and France and a bunch of others. And that major stepping stone that was built toward the one world government will shatter. And they're already hurrying to try and get the North American Union up and running to sort of take its place. But there are literally, indeed, titanic political forces at work. And Boris Johnson so far appears to have done an admirable job of standing up to it.
Yeah, in the UK, when somebody appears like that, well, it tends to be talking about a woman, but we would say a fur coat and no knickers. It appears to be the right thing at the right time, and it looks good, but on closer inspection, nothing there at all. And you also mentioned my second point, which was Germany. Now, I live in Berlin, and I have for a couple of years, and I must tell you, I'm not a crazy right-wing or a left-wing loony. I consider myself a libertarian. The majority of people I talk to here have such a high level of indoctrination, and that's no inference to the 1940s, by the way, that they can never imagine Germany outside Europe. And I say, look, why should you keep on bailing out other European countries and have your own people suffer? But, there's just such a brainwashing going on that, people will say, well, what's wrong with you? Are you racist? Why are you speaking like that? Perhaps you should pay closer attention to what's going at home and help your own people before you allow all this flood of migration and continually bailing out people. But I must say one last thing. The Germans got the best deal because where is the European Central Bank? In Frankfurt, and that's where the power is.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you need to understand that a lot of the people who are out there being very vocal about you're being racist or, why not have open integration? They're not ordinary citizens. They're part of a covert grassroots propaganda network that is probably tied in very much with other propaganda goals as well. So you need to be very, very careful. Here in the U.S., they call it grassroots lobbying. And it's a very real concern. It's a very real business where people go on out pretending to just be ordinary folk, pushing the agenda of whatever their corporate masters want. And I got to see them in action close up in the Pacific Northwest when they were talking about clear-cutting the old-growth forests. And we've seen them all over, pushing, again, the open borders agenda and screaming racism, which is ridiculous because illegal, as in illegal alien, is not a race.
No, not yet anyway. Not yet. Well, thank you very
listen,
much.
Kyle.
We're very glad you're back to health. Good man. Cheers.
Well, I'm on my way. I'm not there yet, but I'm definitely on my way. Kyle, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. More callers waiting on the line when we get back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are loading up, and we're going to go to Dave in Delaware. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's going on, Mike? How you doing?
Doing fine.
First time caller, long time listener. Hey, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Are you there? Yeah. What did you make? Did you see the CIA plane? Did you see the CIA plane that got shot down in Afghanistan? There was like a plane that was shot down in Afghanistan. And then on the nose cone,
there seems to be a very long delay on this conversation. Yeah, there seems to be a very long delay on this conversation, which is why it sounds so stilted. But yes, I heard about this airplane. The Taliban is saying they shot it down. The U.S. is only admitting that the plane carrying fewer than 10 people has crashed. But to me, it sounds like the Taliban scored a hit on this aircraft, and the U.S. is trying to basically, as usual, pretend it's no big deal.
Well, yeah, I'm saying whatever happened, but they were showing how on the front of the nose cone, it said like 11-9, like 9/11 backwards, almost like they're putting it in our face, like it's like, I don't know. You didn't see that?
I would chalk that one up for coincidence. It's a little too subtle for most Americans.
Well, I'm saying, because most Americans are stupid. It's like, nah, okay, Mike. Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing all right. You're all right. I know you're against the military-industrial complex and the medical-industrial complex. Hopefully you're not taking all that stuff that they're trying to give you again, Mike, because that's what screwed you up last time.
No. Unfortunately, I'm in a situation of having to compromise some of my views on that, because without the stuff that they have to offer me, I probably wouldn't be here right now. And again, I don't want to go into the fine details because, what exotic disease I picked up on that last trip to Thailand is nobody's business but my own. So anyway, Dave, thanks a lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And we're going to switch over to, oh my goodness, we lost a bunch of people. Our lines are now open, 800-313-9443, and back to the international news. Okay, over in Libya, things got just a little more scary in terms of the potential for mass civilian death. General Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army has threatened to shoot down civilian planes after 2 days ago declaring a no-fly zone over Tripoli following increased Turkish intervention. BBC reports the unambiguous and shocking declaration as follows. General Haftar's spokesman, Ahmed El-Mesmari, said in a statement that any military or civilian aircraft, regardless of its affiliation, flying over the capital will be destroyed. Looks like, no gray area in that one. Basically saying, stay away. Now, getting on back to what Dave was talking about, the Taliban claimed that they shot down this U.S. military plane in Afghanistan, killing all on board. The U.S. Air Force confirms they've lost a plane. It's crashed, cause unknown. Well, Air Force, just call up the Taliban. They'll tell you the cause. No big mystery there. All right, back to the phones here. Paul in Montana. Aloha, Paul. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, you're like a renaissance. Mr. Rivero, last night, Rents.com, looking at an article by Yoshi Sumatsu, Reader's Digest version, 2003, the SARS. But there's a connection between the SARS and the contravirus, maybe. Mr. Toronto says that the hog feces that they've been getting from the hogs and feeding to the fish farmers on the river has recombined with God only knows what else, and now we're having this controvirus, which is very, very similar to SARS.
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus, which is similar to SARS, except for a 29 point deletion that somehow recombined with something else. Have you seen the article? What do you think? And I'm listening. Good to hear you, buddy.
I've seen. Thanks an awful lot. I've seen several articles about the coronavirus. Now, there's the cynic in me is saying this is just another big puff story to get you to go on out and buy vaccines you don't need. We saw that back in 2009 with when pigs fly flu came on out. But on the other hand, there's a real danger here that the way agricultural and biological products are being handled does create ideal conditions for crossover events in viruses. And except for the demonization of bloggers, there's a movie out called Contagion, which was funded out of the Middle East, amazingly enough. But it's a very, very good movie, very well made. It moves along very, very rapidly, and it's got some good science behind it. So anyway, let's see, I'm getting some news from the control room that apparently Bill Gates is nose deep in corona. Well, he's nose deep in every virus that's out there, and vaccines. He's out there. He wants to depopulate the world using vaccines. And apparently people are already patenting that virus, which is amazing because it's rather new. In fact, the most recent manifestation of it in Malaysia is a mutation. So somebody's probably down there running a patent on that, because the reason for patenting a virus is very simple. Any products related to that virus now have to pay royalties to the holder of the patent, whether it is a blood test, whether it is a vaccination, whether it's a cure. Part of that money will go to the holder of the patent on the vaccine. And I think one of the worst mistakes the legal system ever made was to allow for the patenting of life forms. Now, originally the idea was that synthetic life forms could be patented and should be patented, but that's now been expanded to any newly emergent life form. Grab it, take it apart genetically, throw a patent on it, and it's yours to play with from then on. I'm not sure I agree with that one. Okay, let's see. That's it. Our phone lines are open again. Getting back to the international news, Turkey is demanding that Greece demilitarize 16 Aegean islands amid the gas drilling dispute. That situation seems to be heating up quite a bit. We're burning up all this oil on all these wars all over the planet. So what do we do as we start running out of oil? We start declaring war on other countries to fight them for their oil so we can burn that up, declaring more war. And you see how the cycle really goes. Just think of all the oil and gas, not to mention global warming, that could be saved by calling off all these ridiculous wars. Really. So Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar has formally requested Greece to remove armed forces and weaponry from 16 Aegean islands near Turkey. And it's kind of arrogant, given that it's Turkey that's been provocatively sending warships and military jets to accompany illegal gas drilling in the area, something lately condemned by the European Union. Now, speaking to troops at one of the outposts in Syria, General McKenzie said the U.S. troops are going to be here for a while, that the U.S. has made a commitment, which includes partnering with the Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces and fighting against ISIS. Well, they're not going to fight against ISIS because ISIS works covertly for the U.S., CIA, and so forth. And as far as the Syrian Democratic Forces, they're mostly not Syrian to begin with. Fewer than 5% of the Syrian Democratic Forces are actually Syrians. The rest are all mercenaries. They're just trying to keep that war going, even though we are clearly not winning in that war any more than we're not winning in Afghanistan. Over in Idaho, Lieutenant Governor Janice McLeish came on out with an article saying it's time for Congress to end the undeclared wars and bring the troops home. And Janice starts with George Washington, saying it is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliance with any portion of the foreign world. This was embedded in his foreign entanglement speech. Jefferson was explicit: peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I hope you do as well. President Monroe formalized that policy. The Monroe Doctrine's first point stated the U.S. would not interfere in the internal affairs or wars of other nations. Section 8 of the Constitution makes it clear only Congress shall have the power to declare war. So in other words, all of these war hawks that we have here, up to and including President Trump, they represent a rogue, unconstitutional government operating within the halls of our nation's capital. Okay, over at Davos, President Donald Trump approached Imran Khan even before Khan had started talking. They were in Switzerland. It was a little side meeting, volunteering the U.S.'s help on the Kashmir issue and basically getting ready to stick the U.S. nose into Pakistan and India's affairs. Now, Khan said it was the U.S. which will be able to help resolve the issue and said that he'd pinned his hopes on the U.S. president. Well, that's a little dangerous because both India and Pakistan are, in fact, nuclear times. Now, this is the fourth time Trump has made his offer to come on in and mediate. Each time India has rejected his proposal. Yeah, I wonder why that might be here. Okay, Israel's major political blocs are emphasizing plans to annex parts of the West Bank. So that is still moving forward. And posturing for the next round of elections, Israel's two major candidates, Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, are both taking up plans to annex pieces of the occupied West Bank if elected. It seems no matter who wins the vote, some annexations will happen. So Palestinians living in those sections of the West Bank better start packing now. Now, Gantz is pushing the idea of annexing the Jordan Valley, the southern part of the West Bank. He says it is the eastern defensive barrier in any future conflict. The Jordan Valley borders Jordan, a nation nominally on good terms with Israel. Netanyahu also wants to annex the Jordan Valley and much more. He says if he's elected, he will annex all settlements in the West Bank without exception. This would be a large portion of the occupied West Bank. Netanyahu is also trying to portray Gantz as a left-wing leader for not wanting to annex more of the West Bank. And he accused Arab members of parliament of having stopped Gantz from supporting an immediate annexation of the Jordan Valley. So it's getting a little bit tense over there in Israel's politics here. Now, Trump is getting ready to announce his great Israel peace plan ahead of the visit from Benjamin Netanyahu, but he's already saying up front, you know, the Palestinians probably are not going to like this very much. But say, trust us, it will be good for them. And yes, we're going to take away a lot of their land and a lot of their rights and a lot of what remains of their autonomy and everything. But in the long run, it will be good for them because Israel will take just such really good care of them. So Trump is out there trying to pre-sell this thing, saying it's a plan that really could work. No, Donald, I don't think so. I think you should have minded your own business on this one. All right, so let's talk about the economic news. Stock market today was, well, it was down for the most part. It's been down this whole week, and a lot of people are saying it's a combination of the coronavirus outbreak. It's a combination of nobody knows where this impeachment circus is going to go. But this week, we are due some earnings reports from major corporations. If they do not produce a miracle, people are predicting a correction. So there we are. All right, let's talk about out in California. And apparently, homeowners in the San Francisco Bay Area are furious at being charged $20,000 to clean up a former homeless camp in a Castro Valley ravine. And apparently, Alameda County charged a homeowners association for the cleanup costs after belatedly realizing it was on the HOA's property. So now the association is billing each homeowner $300 to cover the fee for cleaning up San Lorenzo Creek. Personally, I don't think $300 per homeowner is that much, but it does illustrate the fact that everybody's solution to the homeless problem is to ship the homeless someplace else, then clean it up to make it look like it never happened. And that's not an end solution. Remember Solyndra? One of Obama's supported solar companies went out of business. Well, another one has bitten the dust, taken the dirt nap. DC solar owners plead guilty to the largest Ponzi scheme in Eastern California history, and they stole millions from individuals, companies, and the U.S. government. It was just scam after scam after scam. Okay. Now, America has launched a last-ditch attempt to stop Boris Johnson giving the green light for Huawei to help build Britain's 5G network. And U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who will fly to Britain this week, said that Britain faced a momentous decision. And piling on the pressure, he warned that Tory Member of Parliament Tom Tugendhat was right to say that only nations able to protect their data will be sovereign. Well, that's kind of a weird little comment to make here, because the reason the United States is so opposed to Huawei is Huawei will not plug into the NSA's data theft system. So if you go with any Western-produced 5G system, you're not going to be sovereign because your data will not be, in fact, protected. Case of psychological projection there. But that's the real reason. They don't want 5G to come in unless it's American-made 5G, and America's way behind the line. And China's way ahead. That's why you see 5G getting bashed so much all over the internet. You know, 5G will give you warts. 5G will do this. 5G will do that. All righty. Now, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin is going to boost the average debt maturity. Ultra-long bonds on ice. They're still out there trying to do some kind of game to save the economy, or at least make it look like it's being saved until after the election end of this year. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. 800-313-9443. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And under the category of it's about blankety blank time. And apparently Immigration and Customs Enforcement is now threatening sanctuary city officials with jail time for refusing to comply with immigration law. Why did it take so long for this to happen? This should have happened right at the beginning when these officials got up and said, I am defying U.S. Code Title 8, and I'm going to allow the illegal immigrants to flood into my constituency here and commit crimes and rapes and muggings and all this other stuff. And by golly, because I'm a believer in the New World Order, they should have been locking these people up from day one. But at least right now, and at this point, it's a threat. They haven't actually locked anybody up yet, but I would like to see that start happening, because they're literally bartering away the country that Americans built generation after generation after generation after generation in exchange for votes. That's literally what's going on, and it's happening this year during the primary season, during the general election in November. And so let's see here. Now, Selma Hayek, she's an actress, very well known. She's from Mexico. And apparently she got herself into a little bit of hot water, extolling the virtues of this controversial novel about Mexican women, or a Mexican woman. And it turned out she hadn't actually read the book. And she got called out on it. She gave an effusive, appreciative apology for setting her straight, apparently concerned that once you anger the leftist mob, that you could be crushed or canceled. And yeah, you can. Now, this one's kind of hard to analyze, because on the one hand, I think this race baiting that we're seeing to try and keep us all divided and facing each other, and sneering at each other, making stink face at each other, I think that's a bad thing. And I don't think people should be hopping on that bandwagon for that moment of fame. On the other hand, you know, I'm opposed to these crowds that will get upset over something that a celebrity, for example, says in all honesty. And remember, they're celebrities. It's not like they're really in charge of our lives or anything. And then they'll go on out and say, you know, take them off TV, destroy their show. You know, we can't have them out there. That's real brown shirt thinking. That's real book burning thinking. All righty, over in France, as you know, the Yellow Vest protests are continuing. It's been more than a year now. And France has now officially banned this special grenade, the GLIF-4, which is acquired a nasty reputation for maiming the rioters. And France has now banned them. Interestingly enough, they stopped manufacturing these things back in 2014. It's just they had a warehouse full of them. All right, we're going to take a break here now for station identification. We'll be back with hour number 2 after these new words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And again, this is a live broadcast. It's not a best of. It's not a tape. We are definitely live and online here. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you're probably looking at a little green card, and it has to do with the fact that the location from where I am sending this broadcast has very limited bandwidth, and it's causing us the usual problems. And unfortunately, I'm not yet able to return to my home where I have my proper broadcast rig set up there. So let's get into it here. We were talking in the last hour about political correctness, about everybody out there just screaming and whining and crying and give me what I want. And it seems like politics and political correctness have just infused themselves into our lives to what I would consider to be a very unhealthy degree. And by way of example, we mentioned earlier how Michelle Obama won her Grammy for reading her book into a microphone, joining such luminaries of literature as Hillary Clinton and Al Gore and Barack Obama, who all got Grammys for reading their supposedly self-authored books into a microphone. But apparently Taylor Swift, who's multi-platinum and now a high-profile political activist, she canned a planned but unannounced performance at Sunday night's Grammy Awards, apparently in response to allegations that the Recording Academy, which runs the Grammy Awards, was engaged in fixing the nominations process and tolerated a culture of sexual harassment and discrimination against female employees. Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. People are going to keep on hearing all this stuff about sexual harassment, discrimination. It's going to blur together. And they're going to go back to watching the show, and it's just not going to matter to them in the long run. I'm sorry, but that's the way I see it's going to happen. Now, as far as what Taylor Swift is saying about the Recording Academy, I've had very little contact with the Recording Academy, but I have had contact with Screen Actors Guild, the Motion Picture Producers Association, and so forth. And I do know that at least in regards to fixing the nominations, that does happen, because it happened to us on the film Stargate, where the so-called Blue Ribbon Committee took the nomination away from us and gave it to Speed. It's all due to politics and who could make the most money off of winning the award. So that does happen. And like I said, when I worked in Hollywood, I saw a lot of what today would be considered sexual harassment. But on the other hand, back then, you know, the girls were trying to invite it because they wanted the attention, because they knew that was the key to advancement. So anyway. All righty. Over this last weekend, starting on Friday, there was this massive March for Life in Washington, D.C. And somebody put up a time-lapse video showing this massive, massive crowd that poured into the nation's capital starting on Friday. And yeah, people are getting very, very strong emotions about this whole abortion issue. And again, the Democrats are going to make it an issue for the 2020 election. And it is a complicated issue, and a lot of it is tied up with belief systems rather than scientific fact. You know, the belief that humans are human beings either from the moment of conception or not until the moment of birth. And I don't think anybody can say for certain. All I know is it's a potential human being. They have as much right to life as anybody else claims that title. Now, I understand and concede there are certain circumstances under which abortion is medically necessary. What I object to is this idea of abortion being used as, you know, the week after birth control by women who don't want to take responsibility for their sexuality and their fertility. And they go out and they have a good time and they get pregnant and they say, well, it's just a blob of protoplasm and I'm going to throw it down the toilet. I have a real problem with that. And I don't expect everybody to agree with me on that particular issue, but that's just the way I feel about it, and I'm sticking with it. All right, so let's talk about the coronavirus, because a lot of people are saying this could be potentially very, very serious. On the other hand, it may just be another big PR splash to get us to run on out and buy a whole bunch of vaccinations we don't need. Remember back in the 2009 when the pig's fly flu, and they were selling these vaccines. Most of them wound up having to be destroyed after their X dates had gone by because they were never used. So coronavirus has a 15% fatality rate. It's an 83% infection rate for all those exposed. And this is all coming out of a medical journal early study. Now, what makes this a really dangerous virus is coronavirus spreads before symptoms show. In other words, there could be a person in front of you who looks perfectly healthy, seems perfectly healthy. They think they're perfectly healthy. They could even still be spreading the disease. You are infectious before you are symptomatic. That's a very, very dangerous combination. Now, the United States has started evacuating American citizens from the city of Wuhan, which is the center of the coronavirus outbreak. We'll be talking about Wuhan a little bit later on. And China has dumped considerable resources into containing the outbreak, but experts are predicting cases could still soar above 200,000 in less than 2 weeks. It's spreading that fast. Down in Malaysia, they've had their 4th case of coronavirus. This one is a mutated version. So it's mutating in the wild. Nobody knows what the R0 factor is on the mutated version. The 15% fatality and 80% infection rates are all from an early study, presumably of an earlier, more stable genome. Now, again, in nature, all pathogens want to evolve to, oh, no, we're fine. All pathogens want to evolve to a condition of coexisting with their hosts. The most successful pathogens evolve to be less and less disease-causing. That's why when measles first emerged, it was like equivalent to the Black Death and the Black Plague. Today, it's considered a childhood annoyance. There's always the possibility that a virus that's mutating that rapidly could mutate into a form that simply wipes the slate clean, and it doesn't have time to selectively start promoting less and less disease-causing forms. Now, a lot of people are out there buying what are called these N95 masks. And as it turns out, again, people are going to make money off of this whole thing. But they're saying the N95 masks are giving people a false sense of protection because a doctor in China is now warning that he contracted coronavirus by failing to wear a full face mask because the coronavirus can enter the body through the eyes. Nasty, nasty stuff. Another article, this one is coming out of cuzblue.com, reported coronavirus cases in China massively undercounted due to shortage of diagnostic kits and layers of bureaucracy. Now, there are 10 cases of Wuhan virus now in California alone. Just before we went to air, I was watching on the news channel, and they were saying 5 cases in the U.S. as a whole. Well, obviously, that number is now obsolete. And if it's in California, it's probably also in Hawaii as well. So Claire and I got out in time. Now, here is kind of an interesting thing here. Okay, one of our callers earlier on was saying there may be a link between coronavirus and SARS. They're certainly behaving very, very similarly. And SARS spread to about 40 countries, but the infections in most countries were few and deaths almost zero. And it was almost exclusively Chinese who were infected. Those in Hong Kong most seriously, with mainland China suffering little by comparison. And that seems to be the case with this new virus in that most of the infected persons so far are Chinese. Now, there are infections appearing in Thailand and here in the United States of America, but at least as of the writing of this article, they were all Chinese who'd been to Wuhan. There have been no cases so far of infected Caucasians. By the way, that's not what I have either. So, all right. And like I said, it's kind of a hard call to make because we know that a lot of these scare stories about viruses are there to market product. And but the possibility could happen that, yeah, somebody makes a mistake. Now, what's really interesting is that in all of China, there's only one BSL-4 laboratory. By that, I mean Biological Safety Level 4. Biological labs come in 4 different levels, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 4 being the most serious, where the most dangerous pathogens are contained. China's BSL-4 lab is located in the city of Wuhan, from which this outbreak has occurred, which raises the possibility that somebody dropped a test tube, made a mistake somewhere, or that given how SARS ripped through Hong Kong but not mainland China, possibly a biological weapon. Meanwhile, China has banned all wildlife trade because of the virus outbreak being linked to agricultural producers. And wild animals consumed for food are believed to be the source of the outbreak. Well, maybe, maybe not. They said that about HIV. So if you are a gourmet and you favor Chinese bats and snakes, it may be a while before you can get any of them anymore. And as if that wasn't enough to worry about, down in Brazil, there's another virus, Brazilian hemorrhagic fever. And it's called arenavirus. And the last confirmed case was more than 20 years ago, but it's reemerged in Sao Paulo. And it's supposed to be extremely rare and highly lethal. Treatment is according to the patient's clinical conditions and symptoms. In other words, you're just taking care of the symptoms because they can't do anything else. Now, we talked about this a long time ago where they came out with the shingles vaccine. Did you have chickenpox when you were young? If so, the shingles vaccine is already inside you and could activate at any time. And 1/3 of people who had the measles will get the shingles. And they were selling the shingles vaccine, including Zostavax by Merck. And here's where it gets rather interesting because it turns out that studies have shown that Zostavax is actually causing far more problems than good. And as a result, Merck and Zostavax are in hot water. There are at least 80 deaths tied to the Zostavax vaccine that have been reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, with over 100,000 reports of other adverse side effects, including that people given the Zostavax vaccine immediately come down with the shingles. Interesting. All right, well, this being a campaign year, the Democrats are out there with their favorite villain, the gun. Got to get rid of the gun. Guns are bad. They're not. People are bad. people are good. Now, if you can come up with a way to have the good people have guns and the bad people not have guns, I'm with you. This idea of taking all guns away from all people is ridiculous because the bad people, being bad people, will be able to still get guns. These days, in the era of 3D printing, you can make them very easily. Okay, so anyway, Democrats in Virginia are still out there pushing their new gun laws. And the more they're out there screaming about it, the more it's obvious they know nothing about either guns or the Second Amendment. Apparently, their latest argument is out there saying that a pistol grip represents a weapon of war. That if there is a pistol grip on your rifle, that it is obviously set up to be a weapon of war. No, it isn't. It's set up to be more accurate. I had a pistol grip on one of my black powder rifles. Not exactly a weapon of war, at least not in this century. It's one of the things that I think is the doom of our political system, is how politicians really don't know what they're talking about in a lot of cases. Whether it's the realities of immigration and economics, and certainly about human-caused global warming, and certainly about, the firearms. It's just a cause that they can unite the party around and try and garner votes from you, the suckers, who they hope don't know any more about firearms and this Constitution than they themselves do. Sometimes the hypocrisy, though, can be absolutely alarming. Apparently, Nancy Pelosi has her special impeachment pens that she's been handing out. They're shaped like bullets. So guns are good for us in the political class, but bad for you ordinary people. You don't want guns, really. The Democrats are probably going to hire this professional hypnotist, come on the TV set, swing the watch or whatever it is they do and say, you don't like guns, you don't like guns. That's the reason for these drills in the schools, where they'll send in all these guys in costumes with flashbang grenades and everything unannounced. It's to traumatize the kids and have that emotional trauma linked to guns. So they'll go into a store where guns are being sold and they'll say, oh no, I don't want to go near that. I don't want to go near that. The only way to counter that is with gun safety training, since the schools no longer offer that. I think it is appropriate for the older generation of gun-safe adults to make a point of trying to introduce the younger generation to what firearms really are and are not. They're not the hate death machines that you see in movies. That's all made up stuff. Guns are tools. Guns are there to help kick the critters out of your food crops, which may become more and more important as the economy slows down. They're there to chase burglars, other criminals out of your home, which I myself have had to do on one occasion. And if you handle them safely, there's no reason not to know how to use a gun. Better that you know how to use a gun than not. And I'll give you a good example of that. Let's say that little Johnny is walking along, near the woodlands near school, and he looks down and some idiot has dropped a firearm. Now, Johnny Liberal would pick it up and just fuddle around with it until the gun goes off, because he doesn't know how to handle guns. He just knows it's a bad thing, and he wants to rush and take it into the police department and say, ooh, bad gun, bad gun. But in the course of handling it, he sets it off. Now, Johnny Conservative, coming along, would see that same gun. He'd pick it up, he'd clear the gun, he'd know the gun was safe to handle before he took one step anywhere. That's the difference between a population that understands firearms and gun safety and a population that does not. Personally, I think everybody should receive a gun safety class. And again, in my day and age, we did. Schools taught gun safety. They got free rifles from the US government, military surplus weapons. Everybody knew how to use a firearm. It was one of our points of pride as a nation, that Second Amendment. Now we have our government, which has grown deathly afraid of the American people, especially conservatives. They want to try and find some way they can take that Second Amendment away. They've chipped into it. Bans on high-capacity magazines. Virginia's going to wind up being a test case. Virginia's going to get taken to the Supreme Court. We'll see what happens there. But if the Virginia gun laws, as they are instituted now, are allowed to stand, you can kiss that Second Amendment goodbye. You really, really can. All right, we're going to take another break here for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about the gun grabbers are at it again. It's an election year. We've got to demonize the guns. Guns are bad. You know, police with pepper spray and truncheons, those are good. Law-abiding citizens with guns, that's bad. And apparently there's been already a hoax perpetrated by this anti-gun trauma surgeon who posted a photo of a death threat left on the windshield of his car. But friends and neighbors quickly pointed out the car was parked in his garage, which has a closing garage door. And so, yeah, let's cook up a new scandal here. It's been way too long since we had something to really scream about, cry about in the newspapers. Getting on back down to Virginia, I don't know what's gone wrong with those people down there, but, you know, Virginia used to be considered one of the states that wanted to go its own way. But Virginia Democrats are now proposing banning all criticism of all government officials. Now that, of course, flies right in the face of the First Amendment, which exists to give us a right to criticize what our government is doing without fear of repercussion. And so the Virginia Democrats are out there saying, First Amendment, First Amendment, you know, if you say anything bad about any of our government officials, most of whom work for Israel anyway, you know, we're going to throw you in prison. We're going to criminalize everything. And these are hard left Democrats, and they're so terrified of the Commonwealth's conservatives, moderates, and even some liberals, the more saner liberals. They want to criminalize criticism of anti-gun, pro-infanticide Governor Ralph Northam and other top officials. And this proposal to stamp out free speech is buried in a package of amendments to the state code that at first glance seemed innocent enough and would severely punish threats of death and physical harm to the governor and, again, other state officials. Now, I don't have a problem with taking action in the face of threats of actual physical harm or death to our leaders or celebrities for that matter. Not that celebrities matter that much. But what they're talking about here is simple criticism, saying, I disagree with you. I think you're going in a bad direction. And that's what that First Amendment is there to protect. Now, back during the run-up to the American Revolution, I mean, hangings with effigy and so forth were kind of accepted forms of protest. And nobody got really exceptionally upset because, oh my goodness, you've crossed a line from criticizing the British governor to hanging him from, you know, as a dummy from a tree, or tarring and feathering the effigy. It's all considered a continuum. Today, it's like, you know, you have to be very polite and very nice, not offend, when you try and tell the government they're not listening to the American people. And here we have a law saying, well, there's only so much you can do before you have to just shut up and sit down. I disagree with that. I really don't. Now, getting on over to Julian Assange, apparently the US government is trying to make the case that the reason they can go after Julian Assange for WikiLeaks is because he's a foreign national, and that they're trying to make the argument that the First Amendment doesn't apply to foreigners living in the United States of America. Now, I think that is utterly ridiculous. And I understand that there's a big, big debate over illegal immigrants who come to this country and then claim that they have rights under the Constitution to do thus and such. In some cases they do, in some cases they don't. But I think the right to freedom of speech and expression is a universal. and should be treated as such. But again, it's another attack on the First Amendment saying it doesn't apply to foreigners. Well, what other exceptions will they eventually carve into that? Doesn't apply to conservatives, doesn't apply to people who've been convicted of traffic tickets, doesn't apply to people who can't hit the downbeat on a dance step. It's the beginning of the erosion of freedom of speech in this country. We're turning into the former Soviet Union. We're turning into the former Nazi Germany. We're being driven that way by a government that has gotten itself in severe economic and military trouble. They've got a population that is very, very concerned about what's going on. People who are in that government, they love the way things are because it's making them wealthy, powerful. They think they're admired. They aren't, but they think they're admired. And that's why they're trying to take away all the civil liberties that were so hard fought and won during the first American Revolution. The right to speak your mind without fear of reprisal, the right to privacy in your affairs in your home, your right to keep and bear arms. Okay. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break. We've got a phone call waiting on the line that we'll get to as soon as we come back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go right to the phone to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, almost a new show was going to be called What Really Happened to Mike Rivero. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be back. Although I'm not all the way back, but I'm definitely getting there.
How's Claire doing?
Claire is holding up, as best as she can. And she's just been an absolute angel, kind of picking up the slack for things that I have been unable to do, and just keeping our household put together. And every night I FaceTime her right from my little room here at the PT clinic. And but we're hoping that within 1 week, probably 2, I'll be back home and able to annoy her in person.
Well, when you get everything set up back home, is she going to be coming back on the air on Fridays with you?
Yes, she is.
Okay, that's good. Okay, on with my questions. Okay, Mike, did you talk about, I want to know what your feelings and the feelings of some of your listeners are with what Trump did by killing the Iranian general, Soleimani. I think, I said I was over with Trump for that, but, I mean, this guy fought ISIS. He was in the Iran-Iraq war, and like you said, Mike, at the beginning of the show, what's changed? You come back, they're still doing an impeachment fraud, and the people are still flying over the border. Nobody's stopping the people over the border. The wars are continuing, and they're still pumping money into the repo market. So what's changed? And what makes me so peed off? You got Trump, who put in John Bolton. We all knew who John Bolton was. And then, he's getting a lot of money, not only for working for the government, but probably a lot of kickbacks and stuff. And then he basically backstabs Trump. He writes this new book. He makes more money, and we're left with, like I said, no infrastructure bill. The country's infrastructure's rotting away. These people are making tens of millions of dollars, and we got nothing to show for it. Just the same old, it's a clown show, I mean, I don't get it.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
But I mean, why do you think Trump did this attack on Soleimani? What do you gain by doing that? If you want to stop the wars, what's the gain for this? There's no, for me, I don't see no gain.
Clearly, he did not want to stop the war. I mean, clearly the agenda is to get a war with Iran going and to try and provoke them into making the first overt act that can be seized on as saying, see, Iran has attacked us. It's got nothing to do with all the stuff we've been doing to Iran since 53 rather. It's just Iran has just attacked us for no reason because they hate freedom and we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And so we've seen not just this one case, but there have been provocations, over the last several years where the United States is sort of pecking at Iran, trying to get them to peck back.
Well, we do know one thing, though, that their missiles do work. They're ballistic missiles,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Did you see that? I don't know if you saw, there's like a satellite photo release. They hit what they needed to hit. They actually told us what they were going to basically hit, right? That's why all the troops went, which I don't understand how some troops can be, maybe some of the troops were injured from the sound of the explosions with traumatic, but you would think they'd have bunkers that are deep enough where, well, I don't know. I was never in that situation where like a ballistic missile's landing in my vicinity. But, hey, Mike, not only are they picking on Iran, though, but Guaido just visited with Mike Pompeo, didn't he? So they're pecking still at Venezuela also.
Yes.
And Mike, did you see?
Yeah, that's still going.
Did you see actually the picture of Lindsey Graham shaking the hand of Adam Schiff? And somebody overheard him saying,
yes,
that was a great speech. It was very eloquent. So Lindsey Graham, like I said I didn't like him or John McCain. They're all part of the same establishment. It's a big show. They all go to dinner with each other at the end of the night, right? Or they go to the gentleman's club, in Washington, D.C. So, but why? I mean, and the same with Rudy Giuliani. I never liked Giuliani because if you look back, it goes back to where he lobbied with the State Department to get the MEK off the terror watch list when Obama was. So this is all this close-knit group of people. There is nobody in, Mike, I look at it this way, at this point, there's like probably, I can't even count them on my one hand, that amount of people that are for the American people of Washington, D.C. anymore. They're not in Virginia, that's for sure.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. And of course, I've had, little regard for Giuliani ever since 9/11 and that whole, supposed confusion over who told him that Building 7 was going to collapse.
It's just sad how just things are continuing, the way they are, and nothing. Like I said, and I don't know if Tom from Florida called in yet, because I like to hear from him, or Joe from Tennessee, or Peter from Los Angeles, or Mark from North Carolina. But I mean, I got to say this. You bring all of us together. You know how much it sucked, you not being on the air for this amount of time, and it's scary.
I have a huge folder of emails saying, please come back. We miss having somebody to scream at every day.
But Mike, but without you, there's no voice for us to get out that bring us together. And that's how scary it is, because without you, where else do we go, really? And RBN, basically, like that. Like there's just nothing. It ain't going to be on CBS, that's for sure. So I'm glad you're back. I know you're not fully there yet, but and Mike, I like this where you have the phone number on the top. I think you should leave that on, even on when you have a video call, because maybe we can get more people calling in when the number's actually always there. So I like that, having the call 800-313-9443. And that's all I have to say, and I hope everybody calls back in. Come on, where's everybody? Have a good night.
Well, there's actually the phone lines. The phone lines have loaded up while you've been on the line. And so thank you, Destin. We're going to switch over to Bryant in Canada. Aloha, Bryant. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Welcome back, Michael Rivero. I almost thought we were going to change the name of your show to What Really Happened to Michael Rivero.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying the same thing. And there was at one point where I seriously thought I have to quit the show. I can't, but then the doctors figured out what was wrong with me and they've started treating me. And, I'm definitely feeling a lot better. I'm not where I'd like to be just yet. And of course, on top of that is the fact I am 67 years old. And,
You're young.
along with this neurological thing, is the fact that I'm getting age-related slowdown.
Well, Mike, I'm 59, so I'm not far behind you. But the thing is, like I said, during your absence, there was a lot of fear that you might have been knocked off the air, because look what happened with Mike Adams over at the Natural News site when they turned around and tried to destroy his site because he was posting up material fighting back against vaccines and that. And we also lost several other alternative news sites, including Dutch Hints, and several others disappeared. So everybody had thought that you had gone the same way as them. But like I said, it's great to have you back.
Well,
go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I got a lot of emails just sort of pointing at the odd coincidence that I came down this ill just before the Senate impeachment trial really got underway. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, as it turns out, this has been a growing situation since last summer. And it really did interfere with our move out here from Hawaii. And just about a month ago, it just really hit. But anyway.
The other thing I wanted to cover quickly. The only other thing I want to cover quickly, Mike, I wanted your views on what's been happening with this coronavirus scare, because I look at it as nothing but mass hysteria along the same line as the H1N1 scare, and they're doing it purposely, especially through the controlled media, to basically scare the crap out of people. I mean, Mike, for example, up here in Canada, they can't go by now where I'm talking to people, and they're all talking about the same thing. Oh, Brian, what do you think about the H1 the coronavirus? What do you think is going to happen? And I tell people it's just fear mongering is being generated, fueled by the controlled media that for some reason wants to scare people to death, and that people line up like dumb, I don't use the term, dumb sheep to turn around and have their arms rolled up to take whatever vaccine they come up with. It's a sad state of affairs, Mike.
It really, really is. And as I pointed out, back in 2009, they were doing this with, this flu pandemic, and they had articles in the National Geographic about how, 2/3 of the world population would get wiped out. And it was used to basically stampede people into buying vaccines and stockpiles of vaccines that they wound up never ultimately using. And as a matter of fact, we're already getting contradictory information about the Wuhan virus. One article saying that it's under quarantine, the railways and airports are targeted, people are fleeing by road. Then you have these other stories saying that no, according to Flight Tracker, air traffic in and out of Wuhan is normal. So there's all of that situation going on. And there was even one article that came on out saying that Wuhan had gotten this biological weapon from Canada. And this was a test deployment. And that, of course, that turned out to be false.
Absolutely. But anyway, Mike, like I said, it's good to have you back. I know you have lots of other callers. Like I said, welcome back, my friend. It's nice to have you back on the air because exactly like your previous caller said, we need a voice of logic and reason in the sick world we live in, and you're one of them. So keep up the fight, my friend, and nice to hear from you. And good luck.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words. Let's switch over to Tony in Topeka. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how you doing? Nui Nui.
Nui Nui.
Hey, did you see how Iran said that not only did they not shoot down the missiles, like that their missiles were hacked by like Israel, but they were able to hack into like their systems, like the ones that were that rained down the first attack.
No, I didn't see that one.
How the missiles were hacked.
I'm here,
like
and
that's what Iran said. You still there?
Okay, all right. I see what you're saying. I didn't have the context. You're talking about what happened back on the 8th.
Yeah, a little while back, when we ran in the new year with the, it was going to be like World War III. Remember under Trump?
Yes.
With the Iran base, the embassy. You see how they sent some rockets to the embassy today too, right?
Well, Again, I haven't seen the article where Iran is making the claim that Israel had anything to do with the attack. And I'd like to see that
Israel.
before I make a comment
no,
one
they're
way.
trying to say that it's Iran. They're trying to say that it's Iran that attacked. They attacked our embassy again today. That's what they're trying to say. And it was like a couple casualties and stuff like
okay.
that. Did you see with that Trump met with Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House today?
Yes.
They were like talking about like migration and stuff. It was pretty interesting. It was on their website, the whitehouse.gov and stuff.
Okay, well, thank you for the information. I'll take a look into it. I still didn't see who was supposed to be hacking who, but let's see.
Did you see when on
you
the
had
first,
mentioned something?
No, nobody was hacking who. That was the whole question. Nobody knows who is. But that's what Iran claimed, that their missile systems were hacked. That's what they said. And then if you talk about like the whole reason they said the first missile strike on the 8th, I believe, right? They said that it was like an American contractor that was killed. But it wasn't an American contractor. It was like an Iraqi, like, national or whatever. He was like counterintelligence. Supposedly, like, he got killed. Something like that, right? Did you hear about any of that?
Well, listen, Tony, no, I have to look into it. I'm still getting caught up from the last couple of weeks here. Tony, we're going to let you go and switch over to Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, welcome back, Mike. Glad to see you back. Well, to answer one of the questions, at least my comment to one of the questions about the coronavirus here, I think the coronavirus and the Kobe Bryant story are going to be great diversion stories for the entire week. Take the heat off of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Actually, it's going to probably aid the Democrats. But this coronavirus, if it were a serious, deadly pandemic or a worry of that, I would assume, it makes common sense, that the United States government would stop all incoming flights from China. They would never let these people deplane. They would refuel the aircraft and send it back on its way to China. And that's how I know it's a scam. It's a fraud. It's just a little bit of fear propaganda there. And who knows what's in the works here. Maybe the pharmaceutical is going to run out with some kind of vaccine or something for a cure or patch-all. But I'm not buying it one bit.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm not buying it at all. A question for you. I don't know if you caught it today. Did you catch when Donald Trump was talking? It was a live broadcast with Donald Trump sitting down in the White House with Benjamin Netanyahu, talking about tomorrow they're going to be unveiling some new program for Palestine. I assume they're going to give them a little chunk of land and probably take it back later on anyway. But Netanyahu said that Donald Trump is the greatest president that Israel has ever known. It just sickens me what's happening in that area there. And I theorize in the next 5 years, maybe 10 years maximum, Palestine will be gone. There will be nothing left of Palestine. They'll be absorbed by other countries, but there will be no country to call Palestine in the next 5 years to 10 years max. What's your comment on that one?
Yeah. I do agree. It does seem inevitable at this point. I, too, am sickened by this idea of Israel coming on out and saying, which American president was best for Israel, because America's presidents aren't supposed to be good for Israel. They're supposed to be good for the United States of America and the American people. Now, what they're rolling out tomorrow is apparently what they were calling the deal of the century, but they stopped using that phrase because it's acquired such a negative cast. Anyway, Steve, got to take a break for commercials. Back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Keith Rogers. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, welcome back, Mike. I had several things here. It's a shame that everything is being used as a distraction like this farce impeachment stuff. Americans should be demanding questions about the illegal overthrow of the Ukraine government instead of this dithering back and forth about what information was exchanged. And I think even you yourself brought out the fact that the United States has this cybersecurity agreement with Ukraine, which involves financial and everything like that. So Trump was right in selecting that to see if Biden had any back doors into there, which everyone knows he did, as well as quite a few other Democrats. But This is no different there with the Ukraine news today, where they're demanding that Russia pay for the illegal occupation of Ukraine. And then, of course, we're back to the same scenario where it seems like everyone is being farmed out, like Trump already saying that over $1 billion is in the bank for U.S. troops to be in Saudi Arabia, which actually then makes them a paramilitary force. They're not out there protecting this country. They're not doing it for our national security or anything like that. They're just like the CIA's trained.
They're mercenaries.
Mercenaries, you know. And now, as you mentioned there, with that plane shot down, which has been confirmed. But the fact is the war machine goes on, and like Trump's Space Force with the so-called Starfleet. I mean, this is where, if you remember the Presidio, this is where Nancy Pelosi had sold the Presidio to Gorbachev while he still had a main base over in Moscow. But what gets me about this is Trump brags about pumping $2 trillion into the military when boasting to Iran about how, the U.S. would do a deadly strike on them, hitting cultural centers and everything like that. But what gets me out of that entire thing is there are over 1,200 dams that need repaired. Levees, we're coming into spring thaw now, levees along the Mississippi, Missouri that need to be repaired. There's countless 55,000 bridges that need repaired. Americans pay billions of dollars in repairs to their vehicles because of our roads here. And they're not doing anything, just like this sham with this bull crap in D.C. about the impeachment. What we have seen there is 3 years, or 3+ years now, of the elected officials doing nothing for this country. Absolutely nothing.
You're absolutely right. You're doing it all for the war machine, the military-industrial complex, the Israel complex, if you will, the medical-industrial complex. It's everybody's voting their wallet, and it really is a sham. And this country was started with safeguards against that kind of corruption, and they've all been whittled away along with our constitutional rights. And this is certainly not the nation that was intended by the founding fathers, or at least that's what we're taught in school. Maybe it's always been this corrupt, but we didn't see it until the age of the internet.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks, Mike, and best to you.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a break here and back with hour 3 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We have some callers on the line I'm going to get to in just a minute. But again, a reminder for those of you watching on YouTube, the reason you're seeing a static green card rather than a live feed of my face, which you've already seen so many times before, is the location from which I'm sending the signal does not have the bandwidth to support the video. Now, hopefully when I get back into my own home sometime in the next week or two, that'll all go away and we'll be back to normal. And Claire will be joining us on Fridays. Back to the phones here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. First of all, I just want to I'm afraid you're okay now, We're really worried about you. So, did they find out what was wrong with you?
Yeah, they finally did about 2 weeks ago. They took this weird blood test with all these little spiky things on the output, and they said, aha, those shouldn't be there. And that's what finally nailed it in. And I do seem to be getting better. I'm not all the way better just yet. I still can't, navigate my home. And that's why I'm in this physical therapy place.
Okay. Hopefully, everything will be back to normal in, short time.
They're saying 2 weeks. They're saying 2 weeks.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Anyway, talk about diseases and all that. This, coronavirus? I don't know.
Yes.
I got feelings about it. This looks serious. I see some of these films online about the going on in China. This really spread to the United States or anywhere else. This could be like the 1918 flu or something. Listen, I just want to say, today I wasn't even gonna. I was on my way to the gym, and I was listening to something. I was actually listening to Alex Jones on my way, right? And
yeah,
you know what happened? I decided to turn around and drive to this store called Hope in my area here. It's got a lot of good organic foods, a lot of dry foods and all that for very cheap prices, comparatively. And I got $118 worth of dried foods and organic, mostly organic, and a lot of probiotic type foods, good yogurts and keefers and all that. More vitamins, and I'm gonna hunker down. I mean, if it really comes down this way, I'm prepared. You know what I mean? And I suggest everybody do the same thing. Now, that $118 I spent would probably go for $400 or $500 at Whole Foods or something like that. Even Trader Joe's probably over $300. He couldn't even gotten it. So I wish all areas around the country had stores like this, because it's very important. People, you got to take care of yourself now. This is the thing. You got to be prepared too, because may come a time we can't even go outside. I just hope everybody's ready. As far as the international scene goes, I don't know if I've talked to you before about what happened with General Soleimani. That was a shame. That was cold-blooded murder. I mean, Trump, I would say Trump is stupid because he's got people like Bolton work for. This now this is an act of evil. This is a cold-blooded murder of a foreign leader and a great general, by the way, mastermind of a general. The way he defeated ISIS and Al Qaeda. But then again, that's one of the problems, I guess. Deep state doesn't like the fact that he defeated these people. So, but I'm telling you, this is unforgivable. I cannot vote for this. I just can't. I'm just hoping somehow Tulsi pulls out. I'd probably vote for Bernie Sanders if he takes Tulsi as his vice president. Other than that, I just either won't vote or I'm going to vote for third party, some kind of a third party. Love to see Cynthia McKinney maybe run together with Jesse Ventura in the third party. I'd say they might even have a shot if they did that. Other than that, Mike, really bad news. Anyway, welcome back. I'm glad to see you back, and I want to see you all better. Okay? Take it easy.
All right, well, we're working on it. It's going to take a little while longer and everything. And again, thanks to all the get well wishes and gifts and everything people have been sending in. Normally, I do like to personally respond to every single email and well wish and so forth. It's not going to be possible this time. And I'm going to try and get to as many as I can, but I'm probably not going to get to them all. It is simply a matter of resources and time and everything. Anyway, thanks an awful lot, Mark. We're going to let you go and switch over to Alan in Illinois. Aloha, Alan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Basically, I want to rant for a couple of seconds on the issue of white male bashing. And I would include under that major category, white male bashing, what's happening to Boeing Airlines. Now, let me tell you a little about Boeing. I wish in my dreams I could get a job with a company like Boeing that hires all those super intelligent people. So when I heard about these two airplane crashes, I was reading up on them, and I noticed that there's no mention of the possibility of pilot error, okay? Now, what I found out is the crash in Indonesia, which was the old one, the plane in question had some kind of maintenance problems, and there was a decision made to let it fly when it shouldn't have been allowed to fly. Now, in Indonesia, the average IQ there is around 87 points. So they're 10 points below us, and I would say that qualifies them for pilot error. I think Boeing should use that defense. Now, let me tell you about the Ethiopian crash. The Ethiopian crash, which is more recent, the average IQ in Ethiopia is only 69 points. So they are, as a country, 30 IQ points below us. Now, how on earth can their crashing one of our super intelligent planes, how can that not be pilot error? Now, let me tell you how far I want to extend my complaints about white male bashing. I actually believe that Mr. Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, should not be convicted of anything. He's a dirty old man. He's grabbing women. He should wear boxing gloves to bed. But the idea of accusing him of rape and stuff like that is it's just very, very strange, because in contrast, if one homosexual infects another homosexual with AIDS, that adds a $100,000 a year burden onto our social welfare programs. So the AIDS epidemic is costing us over $100 billion a year, and it's not. In fact, they dropped in California for a while. It was a misdemeanor for one homosexual to infect another homosexual, and now it's not even a misdemeanor. So why are we going after Harvey Weinstein? Why are we going after Boeing Airlines? And the answer is it's white male bashing. And I think white males, we have to get a little angry at this and try to figure out a way to bring it to a stop. So I, too, am glad to listen to you and hear you back on the air live. And do you want me to hang on and you want to comment, or should I just hang up?
Yeah, I have some comments, or if you want, you can go ahead and hang up here. I think you're trying to mix apples and oranges when you talk about Harvey Weinstein and Boeing. First of all, with Harvey Weinstein, his behavior is sadly very typical of what goes on in the upper echelons of Hollywood. But you need to understand that in times past, the women who were solicited, touched, groped, whatever, were actively pursuing those interactions as a key to success, stardom, access, power, producers, whatever. And now, of course, it's become fashionable to say, oh, I was abused, the Me Too hashtag situation. And so, women who, before had been saying, yeah, come on, let's fool around here, they're out there now saying, oh, he dared touch me in this and such a way. So it's a matter of politics and fashion. Now, with regard to Boeing, I admire your defense of Boeing. But the reality is Boeing has had a lot of problems lately with their aircraft, and a lot of it has to do, again, as you point out, a lot of the legacy engineers, the ones who grew up with the company, who know how it all works together, have been let go, and Boeing has been staffing up with these H-1B visa engineers from other countries who are intelligent, they're very well educated, but they don't have an integrated system of how the airplanes go together. And that's why you have goofs like the 737 MAX with those engines that are way too forward on the fuselage. You've got that nose gear that's way too high, and it's a naturally unstable aircraft. When you couple that with the fact that one of the two safety systems regarding the angle of attack sensor was simply left out for budgetary reasons, and that was the recipe for those disasters. Then you have the lithium battery issues on the 787, the 777, was it FX, MX? Boeing civilian aircraft lately, they've had a lot of problems, not just those two crashes. And I think it's more management than it is anything to do with white male bashing. So that's what's going on with that. Now, as far as white male bashing itself is concerned, yes, that's a very real phenomenon right now. And we need to find out, why are we all of a sudden being victimized when we really haven't done much of anything other than to build this country. But we're seeing the beginnings of an effort to invert society, where the people who did the building are now going to be down on the bottom, and the people who just did the grabbing and wanting will be on the top. We saw that in South Africa. We saw that in Zimbabwe. And it looks like it's coming here. And it's this attitude that if enough of us get together and scream and cry and whine and whatever, the government will take away what was built by generations of American citizens, generation after generation after generation, will be taken away from them, and we'll be allowed to just move on in and treat it the way we treat our home countries. So that's my opinion on that. And let's switch over now to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Geez, Mike, welcome back. Geez, I'll tell you what. I tried contacting every hospital of any size to send you flowers, and I called up. Of course, nobody at Republic would release that, so I figured I'd try. Nobody. You must be at some tiny place. Is all I can say.
Oh yeah, it's a very, very tiny place. And again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, it's not really a hospital. It is an inpatient physical therapy clinic. And I appreciate the thought of the flowers. But if you want to send them to RBN, that'll be just fine. It's the thought that counts in this particular case. And I definitely wanted to keep my exact location kind of hidden and secret because I'm kind of quirky that way.
Well, I can understand, Mike, but man, a lot of stuff has happened since you've been gone. And can I fold in something from the previous caller and add on some others?
Sure.
Beginning with what Mark talked about with and Dustin about the assassination of that Iranian Soleimani, who, by the way, the Jerusalem Post ran an article saying that they had the Israelis had an assassination list back in October, and he was the number one guy on the list. If you remember, they contacted the Israelis before the hit, instead of Congress. And this was completely at their behest. And by the way, we've also said that it could happen to his successor as well. So this is the way we're going to do it moving forward. But since you've been gone, Mike, it's now against the law to criticize Israel in South Dakota, and it's now against the law. All BDS stuff is now against the law. It's been in Arizona. We've got the Deal of the Century coming out tomorrow, and
yes,
it's ridiculous, Mike. And then we're watching Nat Ladler and Schiff and all those guys, the whole coterie of people impeaching Trump, and he just goes to the other group, the Adelson group, and gives them more. They're about to annex Area C of the West Bank, which is about 60% of the West Bank. That's already under military control, but they're just going to formalize it. So they're pushing him into the Adelson group, and he does that, and it's ridiculous. But the whole Soleimani thing, if you're going to go any further, it was Israel. They put him on their hit list, and the commentators, Mike, who all at once after the day after this hit, these guys didn't know who the hell this guy was. And nobody even knew, but all at once he was the most evil guy in the world. Right, and 2 days before they had no idea who he was. Right, idiots at these talking heads. But to answer your question about the white male bashing, hey, look again.
Yes.
If they're going to take over the United States, and you know who I'm talking about, we're talking about the Jewish lobby and fifth columnists, which have already taken us over. The people they have to beat, the people that stay in their way, are basically the large, intelligent, well-educated, reasonably well-heeled white community, and they've got to put those guys away. They got to get them out of the way. So it's all part. That's the deal. They set all the mores they set all the mores with the media and the entertainment and all that, and it's permitted. We have people like Barry Weiss, for the New York Times, and all these other people that are just, white privilege. Everybody's screaming it now, and it's crap. Yes. But that's what they're doing, but it's being directed. But it's really good to have you back.
Well, you know something.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. It's perfectly reasonable for the American people to have a privileged lifestyle because we built this country over the last 200 years. And this idea that people can come on in and say, oh, that's not fair, you've got to reverse it. I mean, at the very least, setting aside that the goal here is to get rid of the middle classes in opposition to oligarchy, is the fact this is absolute communistic that they're talking about. And if you look at the history of the Soviet Union, some of it was very pretty. Most of it, though, was pretty grim. Because once you take away people's incentive to build fine things, fine buildings, fine industries, and so forth, they'll stop doing it. If they're told that no matter how hard you work, this is all you're going to get, well, then they basically slow down and say, well, I'm going to get the same thing, even if I'm not working very hard. We need to re-incentivize the building of great things, whether they're buildings or dams or roads or train trestles or whatever. We need to re-incentivize that love of building good things just for the sake of building good things.
Mike, I know you know what's going on in South Africa, and you've alluded to it even today. but living I'm now living in the valley. I used to be in Hancock Park. Now I'm in the valley. Got a expensive home and all that. And when you look at South Africa, and all these people, the farmers are being, murdered. The government's saying they can just take it. They can just take all the farms without recompense and so on. And you look at what's happening here, and I honestly see in 10 or 15 years, we're already being white people. And, like my daughter is mixed and my wife is black. But as white people, we are, and even as black people, we're minorities. And we're rapidly becoming a hated minority. And at some point, with the invasion from below the southern border that's being aided and abetted by you-know-who internationally,
yes.
At some point, I expect them to say, well, even though you bought this beautiful home and you've paid for it and all this stuff, you don't belong. This land really belongs to us, and we're going to take it back, just like in South Africa. That's the way this is all going.
Well, they're already making the legal argument. Okay, the Aslan movement is already making the argument that the general who was defeated by Sam Houston did not really have the legal authority to cede. Yeah, Santa Anna did not have the legal authority to cede any part of Mexico to Sam Houston in exchange for his life and freedom. And so that the treaty that was signed by Santa Anna is null and void, and therefore all of that land along the Southern California and everything still part of Mexico. And they're just saying, we're just taking back what belongs to us.
Well, I expect that to happen personally if I'm still alive, because I'm exactly your age. If I'm still alive in 15 years, that's what's going to happen here. And they're going to say, all the preparation of the hated minority thing and an overwhelmingly, rejiggered population. Welcome back, Mike.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much here. We got to let you go for another commercial break. We got another caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go right back to the phones to Miles in Maine. Aloha, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, welcome back. It was really boring around here without you, I got to admit. And
well, thank you very much.
Your voice is music to my ears. I think I made up my mind for 2020. I think it's going to be Soleimani that gets my vote. It's my protest vote.
Well, to revive the slogan I ran under in 2016, he could hardly do any worse.
Right. Yeah, honestly, he would have probably been a great improvement. He'd have probably kept that Congress and Senate in line, and you know who. But my question to you is, if you heard very much about this other underling, I guess, of Soleimani that was, they rode up on him and shot him, and that was about all I've been told about.
When did this happen?
I guess just like yesterday or in the last couple days, maybe.
Well, that would make sense. He was apparently number 2 on Israel's assassination list. And by the way, there's nothing new about Israel keeping an assassination list. For that matter, is it unique to Israel? I mean, Nixon had his enemies list. And but Israel loves to win by assassination. They've been doing it all along. And so the question is, who else is on that assassination list? Certainly hope I'm not. And, what order are they in?
Well, Michael, I hope you're feeling better. That was all I wanted to say. And it's, like I said, it's music to our ears to hear you back. So keep doing whatever you're doing, and you're sounding great. So take good care of yourself, and we'll be calling you soon.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the phone calls, and we're going to switch over to Lenny in California. Aloha, Lenny. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
First of all, I want to say welcome back. It's good to hear you getting the gang back together again. Since Sounds like everybody's starting to filter back in, and that's a good thing because, like Dustin said, this, is a big part of the program. It brings in a lot of different views, and it's always a good thing. To the caller who talked about the white male bashing, he has a point that there is white male bashing going on. But to what he said about the Ethiopians and having the IQ, hell, they just bought the plane, man, and tried to fly it without a necessary safety procedure. They didn't build the plane, all right? Like the other people who crashed, it had nothing to do with their IQ. It had everything to do with Boeing going the cheap route and trying to make more money when they could have just put the thing on and included it for free, all right? But you took care of that. You are
absolutely correct.
But you took care of that. But let me just get to something else. If he wants to talk about white male bashing and he wants to equate himself with Harvey Weinstein, now, let me say this. Harvey Weinstein as a quote-unquote white male is not the same as Junior Samples down in Mississippi as a white male. All right? And if I, as a black male, have to point that out to you, sir, then you need to check yourself. All right? There's a group of white males who had to run another group of white males, or predominantly, out of their countries 109 times. And it seems like it may have to happen again. But why do we have the white male bashing? Because they don't want it to be 110th time. But trust me, sir, you and Harvey Weinstein have nothing in common unless you do, and you're just not telling us. But to what Justin said, and Peter did answer the question to a degree, well, he did answer it. Why did President Trump do what he did to Soleimani? Simple, because Netanyahu and Israel told him to. It's as simple as that. And even when he came into office, it was Netanyahu that bragged about the fact that he told Trump to get out of the nuclear deal that the EU had set up and Obama and them had put together with Iran. He bragged about it. But what I find interesting, and Peter in Los Angeles is 100% correct, the Jerusalem Post did run an article stating that Israel, gave Trump the information to do the hit. But what was interesting, right after the hit was done, Netanyahu goes out in public and said, well, Israel, we didn't have nothing to do with it. We're totally clear. We didn't have nothing to do with it. This is what someone thinks of you after you worship them like the way you do Trump. This is what they really think of you. Okay? But you even had the likes of Lindsay Ladyboy Graham bragging about the fact that he knew the hit was coming. Well, who do you know besides John McCain was Netanyahu's favorite fluff boy, besides Lindsay Ladyboy Graham? Okay, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you're absolutely right there. That's the way Israel operates. They'll, give the information for something to happen, then they'll back off and say, well, we didn't actually do the assassination, and, anything that we did to facilitate it is kind of irrelevant to the discussion. Anyway, listen, Lenny, I'm going to put you on hold. We're going to take another break for commercials. Don't hang up. We're going to come right back to you after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're still with Lenny in California on the phones here. And Lenny, you're absolutely right talking about what happened with Boeing. And it's got nothing to do with the IQ of the people in the countries where those planes were being flown, because you would expect that the process of winnowing out the pilots, they're going to go for the kids with the higher IQ anyway. They may not even be born and live in those specific countries. And so that's kind of an irrelevant argument for him to have made in the first place. But yeah, Boeing's had problems with a lot of their planes. They've always had problems with their military aircraft, and it looks like they brought some of that management structure over to the civilian aircraft, not realizing that we're going to be a little bit more sensitive to plane crashes than the military are.
Yes, and like I said, I don't disagree with him that there is white male bashing going on, but that is because if you look at the history, when a certain group of people have entered a predominantly white country and done what they've done, they've been run out of those countries or excused from those countries 109 times. Okay, well, if history and nature is consistent, then we can look at a possibility of 110. It's just that the powers that think they be are doing this because they're looking for some soldiers to be on the front line. But I do not, as I've said a million times before, do not intend to be one of them. All right? So what you do in this life and bring upon yourself, you deserve for yourself. All right? But let me get to, speaking of, I don't know if the plane that so-called crashed or fell out of the sky in Afghanistan today was Boeing. I know that the U.S. government is being very kind of weird about it. They're saying one thing one minute, one thing the other. But if you remember,
well, the Taliban are claiming they shot the plane down.
Yeah.
So it's almost irrelevant who made the aircraft.
Well, that's my point. But I'm saying is they were saying it was a Boeing plane before. So I'm saying it has nothing to do with intelligence of flying a plane. Was my point. But what I am saying is this. Iran, when they struck back before the Soleimani assassination, they claimed 80 U.S. fatalities. Trump said there was no harm done. So far, so good. We're all good. Now it's coming out that there are 37 traumatic brain injuries. Okay? Do not be surprised if, and I'm going out on a limb, but I don't think I'm too far out of the box on this. Do not be surprised if some of the bodies may have been frozen, put on that plane, and when that plane came down in Afghanistan today, that may be a reason to excuse those deaths that may have happened during the Iranian retaliatory strike.
That's a little bit out there, Lenny. I'm sorry. I'm not going to buy that one. No.
That's okay, but I'm just saying it may be a way to explain it away, because I'm just saying that some people reported during the initial Iranian retaliatory strike, 137 soldiers dead. Now, I didn't buy that either. Okay, but I'm saying for Trump to say there was no injuries, no harm done. Now they're saying that there were 37 traumatic brain injuries and people being flown to Germany and stuff. You don't think some of those people can pass away? Do you not really think that?
I'm sure that a lot of them are going to pass away. There's no question about that. But going to the lengths of like freezing them and putting them in this plane over Afghanistan, that's a little much. All you need to do is, plop these people into one of those little metal caskets and just say, died in the line of duty, and send them back home.
That's a relevant point. But I'm just saying, this government is going out of its way to pull a lot of other crazy things. That means they still want me to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald shot, 2 people with 1 bullet. All right, and I ain't buying that either.
Okay, well, yeah, but again, I think the Afghanistan incident is totally separate from what happened with Iran. And I think it was a classic case of somebody got overconfident. They flew that airplane into an area they shouldn't have, and they got shot down. And the U.S. is trying to hem and haw and explain the loss of the aircraft without admitting that there was, in fact, a shoot down.
Point taken, but I do appreciate you letting me espouse my view. And it's good to have you back. And like I say, it's good to hear you getting the gang back together again.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to, let's cover some news from some of the more esoteric parts of the world here, of which, of course, human-caused global warming. Now, I have to be very honest. We had a brief bout with snow a few weeks ago. I think I even posted a photograph. And but actually, it's been a very mild winter so far. Everybody around here is saying very mild compared to other years. We still have to get through February and see what's going to happen there. But so far, it's been a relatively. It hasn't been the disaster we were kind of thinking it might be. Meanwhile, Prince Charles flew a grand total of 16,000 miles in just 11 days on 3 private jets and a helicopter before he took his photo op with climate alarmist Greta Thunberg over in Switzerland. 16,000 miles on private jets and helicopters. Now, I wonder how much greenhouse gases Prince Charles put out there. But, famous people and liberals are ready to tell everyone else how to live, everything that you're doing wrong, the limousine liberals don't actually have to follow the rules they set out for everybody else. You should watch your carbon. I don't have to watch my carbon. I remember when Al Gore first came on out with his human-caused global warming, and he openly admitted he wanted to be the world's first carbon billionaire. Okay, we've got to take, no, we don't. We're right in the middle. I misread the clock there. We're going to take a phone call now from Davey in Texas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, man, Mike, I'm just glad you're still alive and get back on the radio. I think everybody else kind of...
Yeah, me too.
You know, and all of that. But a couple of items real quick. Number one, on today's Ron's website, UNZ, Ron himself has a pretty good presentation about the 109 times people, you know, and I think it's well worth the read for people who have the time to read it and comment. And number two, I remember one time I asked you about Less Visible, and if you could do me a favor and have Less Visible on for a couple hours one day and do a big time kumbaya on there, because, you know, there's guys like Lenny out there and a whole bunch of others like Tony and all the rest of them. And, you know, the truth is we outnumber the enemies of truth and justice, you know, millions to one, really. And it's just time for people to stand up and go complete and total global pogrom 2020 on them, you know. Number three, are you familiar with
before you go to number three, before you go to number three, I just wanted to back up and say, you know, I am going to try and have more guests onto the show, and Less Visible is always welcome to come on the show whenever he wants. In fact, for a while, we corresponded regularly. I had him on the show regularly, and then something happened, and I still don't know what it was, where all of a sudden he got very angry with me and stopped returning my emails, and I don't know if somebody hoaxed him and sent him something in my name that angered him. But Les, if you're out there, you're always welcome on the show, and we'd love to have you back. So now, Davey, on to number three.
Yeah, I was just curious, are you familiar with all the provisions of the Guacamole Act of 1917?
Absolutely not.
Well, you know, those deep-sea flies with beaks are protected from pilfering. But I know there's something else in there. We got to be these terrorists that print the currency and own the media and run this crack house called Congress. Good to have you back, Mike.
Thanks an awful lot. And let's see, we're going to go to Sebastian in Sweden. Aloha, Sebastian. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike, and welcome back. It's glad to hear your voice again. You do sound good. I just wanted to talk about, I was sick between Christmas and New Year, and I'm 5 years your senior. And I tell you, when you get a bug, it's hard to get rid of it. And I finally got rid of it, but it's a problem. I just want to talk about beginning of the new year. Last week we had 4 bombings in Sweden in 2 days, which is, you know, the beginning of the new year. And then before that, we had a bombing in one of the richest sections in Stockholm. It would be considered the Manhattan of Stockholm. And just before Christmas, or between Christmas and New Year, my youngest son, which is 29, was beaten up, and they tried to take his phone. He fought back, and money and ribs, you know, cracked, but he got a lot of punches in, even though I think it was 7 or 8, but he survived. But, you know, it's getting really bad around Sweden now. In small cities, some you can't even go in, you know, a city of 15,000, you can't go to the centrum now because these new people, they come in, they call them children, but we call them bearded children that came in. You know, they lie up their age at 25, but they say they're 14. And it's a real problem here. But, you know, and I don't know what's going to happen, but we got 2 years, unfortunately, for another election, unless there's another, you know, extra election called. But who knows what happens. I just wanted to say something about Peter talking about the situation in South Africa. I know I heard about that, but a friend of mine told me today that was a black woman doctor that came upon a diaphragm that for women, and it's a new invention, and in such a way that if you think about Velcro, that it has to be surgically removed. So if someone tries to rape a woman, they have to go into this hospital to get it removed. And I think that's really great. And of course, they're going to be forbidden in Sweden. You know, Sweden's so liberal, the government now. And he came out today and he said that everybody should be educated on the Holocaust. And I wasn't even born during the Second World War. And my father told me so much about it. My mother, you know, they were in the Battle of Britain, my mother. And so I just don't like war movies at all. So it doesn't involve me. I don't care one way or the other. I was born in 1947, after the war. Hello there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Here.
I'm tired of that. So I'm glad to hear your voice, and I'm glad
Israel's newest thing. Israel's newest thing is that if you're tired of hearing about the Holocaust, that's a form of anti-Semitism.
Well, I know they're having a lot of in Facebook. I think there are lots of pensioners that said, "Oh, we have too many foreigners," and that's a form of discrimination. So they're fined 10,000 crowns. That's about $1,000, and that's a lot on your pension. I mean, most people don't get maybe $1,500 or at the most $2,000 for a pension in Sweden. I know that people that were secretaries for the government, and they still get under the European exit minimum for pension. And someone who brings their family over that are older, that our prime minister said that they're going to do now, they have a right to do that, they get just as much or even more for not even working a day in Sweden. And that is so, you know, it's, anyway, I just had to, you know, throw that on to the listeners to find out what's happening in Sweden. It's nothing changed. It's the same thing. You take care of yourself.
You know, it's a shame. Thank you very much. It's a shame because Sweden is one of the countries I would love to visit. I've never been there. Actually, I've seen only a small part of Europe. I'd like to see the rest of it. And but yeah, it does seem like this open borders thing has really caused a lot of problems. All righty, getting on back to the news here. Apparently over in Germany, there is a panel of linguists who have arrogated to themselves the right to decide on words to ban every year. No longer up to you if there are words you don't want to use anymore, like arrogated. But apparently this year they've announced the unwording of the term climate hysteria because it undermines the propaganda about human-caused global warming. So that's basic. I mean, how Orwell can you get? You've got a phrase here that sort of ridicules the whole hysteria about climate, which it is. So we're going to ban that so people can't think about climate hysteria, so they'll be more likely to believe the propaganda. And it is. It's right out of Orwell's Newspeak Dictionary. And if you remember reading the book 1984, every year the Newspeak Dictionary shrank size year after year after year. The idea was to eliminate language and limit free thought and free speech, making it harder for the plebes to vocalize their opposition to the party. And that's exactly what's going on here. They want to take away our ability to vocalize our opposition to the scam of human-caused global warming. So we'll just take the words away from them. We'll just take the words away from them. It'll be fun. All right. Now, if you have DirecTV, you may get a temporary suspension of service here because apparently DirecTV has one satellite that is acting up. Its battery system is giving indications it could literally explode. And so U.S. authorities have granted permission to DirecTV to move this one satellite from the current geosynchronous orbit up to what's called the so-called graveyard orbit, which is something like 300 kilometers further out than the geostationary arc. And the idea being that they'll park this satellite there and wait to see what happens with it. So, shame about those bad. You know, it's really a shame that the shuttle program was abandoned. Now, the shuttle program could never get out to the equatorial arc, or the geosynchronous arc, rather. But with boosters, it could have, or a larger shuttle, it could have. But there's a lot of investment out there in that hardware. And at some point, going up to repair it versus simply outright replacement is going to pencil out. All right, there's the music. We're going to be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. And interestingly enough, you know, a lot of people are very concerned about eating healthy, eating well. A lot of commercial endeavor in terms of TV commercials are out there saying, this is healthy for you, this is healthy, this has got, you know, and they're out there saying, oh, this other product has got these things that are bad for you. That powers a huge amount of advertising these days. Well, right now, soybean oil has been marketed as a healthy alternative to other kinds of cooking oils. It turns out, under examination, it is not as healthy as you might like it to be. In fact, it causes neurological changes in the brains of mice and may contribute to autism and dementia in us poor old human beings. So, yes, no, thank you. All right. I was being served my dinner here. Okay. So let me get back to, they're just not entirely used to me around this facility. All righty, let me go back up here and find this other stuff. There we are. Right, here we go. All righty, apparently Cindy McCain has come on out and said that everybody knew what Jeff Epstein was up to. And of course, nobody did anything about it. Either they were in on the feed from the blackmail machine, or they've been caught in it themselves already. Gap is closing 40 stores. Now, I understand, you know, now that the Christmas shopping season is over, that a lot of iconic retailers are going to be looking at their sales figures. And like I said earlier in the show, there's some earning reports due out this week. And if they're not wonderful, we could be looking at a major correction here. Over at the world of Microsoft, their Internet Explorer zero-day fix is breaking printing. Microsoft's temporary fix for a recently disclosed IE zero-day vulnerability is causing numerous problems in Windows. I think we've just made these things too complicated. I think they're just way, way, way too complicated. All righty. Intel is patching the patch for the patch in its zombie load flaw. And apparently, speaking of Jeff Epstein, federal prosecutors say Prince Andrew has provided zero cooperation in their Jeffrey Epstein investigation, despite publicly promising he would, as the U.S. attorney leading the probe gives press conference outside Epstein's New York mansion. That one is not going away for quite some time. Remember what we reported earlier in the show. The warden in charge of the jail area where Epstein supposedly committed suicide has now been promoted to a cushy job. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here, and we'll get back to getting better. So please stay tuned for John Stadmiller and his program. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN and whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.